Some of you don't know me. My name is Nikki. I work at CYA as a student affairs and DEI assistant, and one of my roles is to bring incredible people like these two people here to talk about issues that also concern us here in Greece and maybe we don't really know, such as the Afro-Greeks of Avato. And I remember when we were doing this research, I was so curious. I was like calling people, texting people, emailing everyone, being an aggressive person to get what I want. But eventually, here they are, and I'm gonna give them the floor to introduce themselves and their work. And I'm also curious for this, so thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Nikki, so much for the introduction, for the invitation. Thank you to the CYA for hosting us and everybody here for attending. I am Sotiris, this is Ionian. I believe it's maybe too loud. Is it okay, the sound?
Too loud.
Too loud, okay, so I'll try to keep it in a distance, okay. We are Latent Community, an artist duo based here in Athens, Greece. We are filmmakers and visual artists, and our practice focuses in social, political, and ecological justice. We mainly make films with participatory ways. We work with film communities. Our work is influenced a lot by research, and specifically field research. And we would like to share some older projects with you before getting to the topic of today's presentation. So we can start with a project called Neromana. And it has to do with this village in central Greece called Kavio. Maybe some of you have seen the news circulating about the drought that is happening in the artificial lake of Mornos, and there is this ghost town, ghost village that is emerging from the bottom of the lake. This is it. We worked on it, we made an underwater film in 2017. At the time, the story was really unheard between people that we were asking about. It's the main reservoir of water for the city of Athens. And what we did was to find the community that used to live in the village and work with them, make this underwater film and let them narrate the story. So in the film we visit this place that is not accessible anymore, and the people that lost their houses, they lost their lives there, are narrating their memories and their stories, weaving like a polyphonic narration for the film. Would you like to?
We started with this project because this project has an important thing behind it. It's the way that we try to give our conceptual driven to our project, and this project named us as Latent Community. When we visited this place, we saw totally a submerged thing. The whole village was covered by the water of lakes, and we tried to think what happened there. We tried to think how we can narrate something that is missing. And when a previous inhabitant of this place started to show us different parts of the lakes, noticed, for example, the school, the church, or so on to the lake, and we didn't see nothing. And this is the way that we try to rethink about Latent as a state of describe something that is missing. And this is the way that we started to search about marginalized experience that has to do with Mediterranean, Greece, and so on. And this is how we started to work with a complex situation, with a migrant tragedy in 1997 between Albania and Italy. It was the first time that the official European, let's say, authorities attacked to a migration boat. This happened because of the civil war. A lot of people from Albania tried to escape from this situation. And on March of 1997, a mutual agreement from the Albanian state and the Italian state called Bandiere Bianchi caused to this tragic event that caused to the death 81 people. And what we did to this project is to try to think what is missing from this story in terms of historical context, in terms of the memory, and we found a lot of interesting things about the politics of memory, and especially how the Italian state expropriated the boat and commissioned an NGO to turn the boat into a monument in order to erase the crime. So we decided with the community of the victims and the family members of the victims to revisit again this place and to ask a question that was ignored and to see in which ways we can rethink about the memory, and especially a memory that goes beyond the special memory, the authoritarian memory. So we try to think a lot about community rituals that can give again the chance to these people to reconstruct this losing memory. And this is the way that we formed our modus operandi as Latent Community. Here we can see some of the ritual that happened during our trip from Albania to Italy. And now we come to our final project that called Avato.
Avato is this community and village in northern Greece, close to the borders between Greece and Turkey, that is inhabited by a community of people are of African descent, and the history says that they were brought here through the Ottoman slave trade. So a long time ago. We would like to share with you a short video that we have, which is like part of our ongoing project and research about this, and then we can continue with some more in-depth context.
And this is something interesting because in comparison to what happened to the second generation of the African citizens that live in Greece, that demand the Greek citizenship, and it is totally right to have it. The strange thing with them is that they already have the Greek citizenship, but they don't know how they came to this place. Is that there is no a specific written memory or an oral history that proves their origin. I don't know what happened. Maybe it's time to pass the microphone.
And as Ian said, Avato is a place and a community that is deprived of its history and its cultural background, which is a very violent thing. And as much we were trying to get deeper and talk with the people and talk with people outside the community and historians and other researchers about that, and it was clear that it's an erased history and a lost one. We started raising the question of how the individuals themselves deal with it and what's the impact of that. And in a place like that and in a case like this, it's very prominent, of course, the generational trauma and what it makes and how it affects people. But as Jules Seren sings in the end of that short video for the non-Greek speakers, she says, "I owe nothing to nobody." And that was a moment that, not the moment of the singing and dancing, but a moment in the research that we understood that maybe we were looking for something that we shouldn't. And it's not a real question, and it's definitely not a question for us to make. And maybe those people, of course, they don't owe to look back if they don't want to, and definitely not to share that with any outsiders or anybody that is curious about that for research or artistic reasons or academic reasons or whatever, because it's still a live community that's fighting for their everyday life. They're really deprived of so many things in like social and political and like state level, which for them, they pose their own questions. So that was a turning point on the process, and we started to be more attending and more active on listening to them. And that changed again when we met with someone that was part of the community and was referred to a lot as the person that might have the most knowledge between the people. And he wasn't living there anymore. He had left the place, he had left the country, and he was working in Germany. And we see him, of course, in the film, and he has a different perspective because he has the perspective and the experience of a different context, being outside of the place that he was born and grew up, and he was in relation with different communities and different individuals, which always shift the perspective of how we see our own selves. And it's very interesting for us to see the different layers and how complicated the community dynamics are, specifically in a place like that is in a way like an ecosystem or like a coexistence of different type of minorities. This community refer to themselves as the minority of the minorities. They live with the Turkish minority that live in the area, and the Muslim minority, and everybody in the community has their own struggles and they come from a different place, and sometimes they form alliances and they collaborate, and some other times there are like conflicts between them. And it was very important to us to look at the place and the area in its whole and not to isolate or marginalize again a community in contrast to another community for whatever reason. So that was very, very important and brought like a lot of knowledge on how we should move forward. And of course, in the film or like in the notes that we have, we mostly we only see people that they granted us the right to record them, record their voices, record their faces, and use them for our artistic reasons. There is many more people that we had amazing conversations, but they didn't want to get recorded. And lots of people there are afraid, and that's a reality. And they're afraid for many reasons. One reason is being misrepresented by anyone that is coming from the outside. Of course, there has been some cases that maybe some journalists or like news reporters visited the place, and they always have a really bad feeling from the way that they see themselves and their community and their place and their hometown being presented in the public speech and discourse. So this has made them very close and distant, and probably they're right about that. So because we are not journalists or news reporters, and we are not academics like anthropologists or historians or anything like that. We are artists that we're trying to collaborate with communities and bring them in the making of projects, because we believe in the importance of like the collective storytelling, because this is a very big part of the art and film. It's the stories that matter and how we narrate those stories and who narrate those stories to whom. So that's the reason why we choose to work slowly on cases like that and not rush things and not cross lines that need to be respected always. Obviously we can, and there are some slides left from the process, and we can keep talking a lot, but I think it's maybe a good time to open up the conversation, because we prefer that and make it a bit more live. Thank you very much, and we wait for your questions.
That brings to mind something. Last year I heard a lecture by Michael Hertzfeld, the great anthropologist and trustee of CYA, and he made a comment that you can tell how much Greek society is changing in that the most famous Greek in the world is a black man, Giannis, the basketball player. Yeah. And I wonder how that fact has affected these black communities in Greece. Are they aware of this? Or does it sort of give them a sense of pride? Or for you, how has this affected people?
Do you want to answer? Does Linda want to answer?
Yes, I can do it.
Amazing. There you go.
Thank you for the question. I think that the story of the Avato, it's, let's say, something really strange of what happened to the central part of the Athens. For example, this sense of the empowerment is much more present, for example, in the African community in Athens. But in Avato, we are close to the borderlands, and they are the conflicts about the states, the Turkish and the Greek states. There are some different micropolitics and conflicts. So the idea of what we name African identity is covered under the Muslim and the Christians. So the battle has to do about the Muslims and the Christians there. And they are these two power dynamics, and also because we are in the very conflicted area that has to do a lot with how we try to identify ourselves. It's, for example, very dangerous, as Sotir said before, for some people to feel this sense of the empowerment, and also because of what happened here, of these missing parts of the history. There are a lot of speculative narrations that came from these power dynamics. There are a lot of speculative narration that came out of the religion, a lot of speculative narration that came out of what we name master narratives. And what is really missing is what we try to do, to give the chance to the people to start think about themselves, to start thinking about their identity, start to create a process of defining themselves in the way that they can feel them empower each other. And for example, to come back to the question is that, for example, in Athens, that I think that you know better, that this sense of empowerment, this sense of proudness out of Yannis, it's something very present in the African communities.
Can I say something about that? You're the person to say something. Yeah, I know. I know me or Linda. I wanted more black people, but people are working, so it makes sense. I think in relation to Yannis, definitely there is a sense of pride, but I would say that pride, from what I perceive, is mostly for the Greek community and the Greek state. Like the concept of having a Greek person in NBA is huge. So if that person was white, obviously it would be very easier to connect with. But since it's Yannis who did it, we have to connect with Yannis. And I think that there is a sense of glorification towards Yannis that at the same time others, the black people of the community. There are people who are emerging, such as Manolo. I don't know if he was the Olympics. He also won in pole vault. So you start observing that there are big people, but they are restricted in a sense that you can't imagine black people in other sectors. Like you can't imagine someone speaking at CYA or someone becoming a political, the Greek brain does not stimulate in those sectors for black presence. So yeah, I love Yannis, but I don't know if I'll give you an answer. Linda, would you want to add something about Yannis or other questions? Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I think you don't need it here.
No, this is, I'm actually just a neighbor of the place, but I have worked with Safiya Suleiman, who is, has an NGO in the Roma community in Xanthi. I don't know if you've met any of them, but in any event, as you were explaining what you do, it almost felt like it's sort of like living archaeology. It's almost like you're excavating the histories of living people. which is very interesting. And in archaeology, it's something that's discussed a lot at the moment. Some of the stuff you brought up, meaning when you go and excavate something, you have to be very, very careful about what assumptions you bring to it, because it will flavor the narrative you extract from the stuff you're excavating, right? I guess what I'm trying to ask you is, when you go into a situation like this, like you described some of it, you know, that there were some turning points where you realized that you were perhaps, in a sense, trying to shape their memories by the way you were asking questions or the questions you were asking. How do you purge your assumptions when you go into a situation like that? It must be difficult.
It's, thank you for your question, and it's certainly difficult. It's okay if I'm sitting here?
Restaging.
Here? On the podium?
I'm an artist.
So I see the conceptual connections between our work and archaeology, and of course, as you mentioned, archaeology either can be a very violent act. Right?
It can, yes.
Archaeological research and excavation is an act of destruction. So, and we always keep that in mind in general when we enter a place and visit a place, because we are like a foreign body entering a different ecosystem. And this is always dangerous for many different reasons. Dangerous maybe on quote.
Yes,
not
I mean,
in a threatening
No,
way.
no, you're not going to beat anybody up, but yeah,
There is things
there's
that
an
can
element
happen.
of violence, of schism.
Exactly. And there is always things that can happen and have a negative impact that they weren't intended.
Exactly.
But intention is not always enough to do such a work. Like good intention is not enough. So we try to be as informed as possible, as aware of our presence and the relationality and positionality of our presence there, and at the same time be merged in this place.
Yeah.
We are visitors, we are guests, and it's important for this to be prominent always. We were invited in their homes,
Yes, I see
the
that.
personal space. This is one of the most difficult things to do, but it tells a lot. And for that reason, we try to, instead of having like a more aggressive approach of like, oh, we are here and we have questions to ask, it's more of like trying to, we don't live with them.
No.
This is like an ethnographic approach that sometimes shows a lie, it's different, and at the same time changing the route of, it's my train of thought. Because I'm also thinking that like archaeology, ethnography, anthropology, all those sciences come from a very clear colonial background.
Yes.
And Greece has also suffered by them
Yes.
and this colonial gaze. So we really try,
Still does, I would argue.
as much as possible, not to reinforce that same gaze
Right.
in our work. So we try to apply practices like active listening.
Yes, I understand.
And like keep the process as much open as possible, so it gets formed
Yes, so
by
you
the
basically
terrain
change
and us
gears, yes.
as well. We get saved by the process,
Right.
by them. So
No, that kind of fits with my own experience with the Roma, you know, where I mean, I've had this relationship for 10 years now, and at least for me, it has come up sometimes. You know, I don't think I'm a jerk, and I don't think I'm a horrible person, but, you know, when you come into a community you don't know and a culture you don't know, it can be difficult to be completely open. Because you're constantly looking for a guidepost somewhere, right? So even if you have no intention of doing something wrong, whatever you want to call it, right? You really have to be very hyper aware of it. Can I just ask one follow-up question? Because I just wanted to.
I would like to add something of what you said in terms of the archaeology, and I would like this practice, let's say, in terms of caring.
In terms of?
Caring.
Okay.
Because you need to care about something that is fragmented, in this case. So you have to see how you can excavate it in this story, care about the story and try to bring it in front in order to create this puzzle, this mosaic.
Put the shards together, yeah.
Yes. So I would like this idea of caring in terms of the archaeology. Also, sometimes we need this practice of that ethnographers use, trying to bond with the communities.
Yes.
Sometimes the idea is the food, the sharing.
Always.
So we start with the caring,
Yes.
and then we try to share, to create a common ground, common experience, and to share our food.
Yes.
So this is another part that also starting to bond us with this
that makes
community. And sorry about this. And what also close this approach that we have is that this idea of fragmented realities that we try to bring them together and try to create this polyphonic narration that Sotiri said before about our previous projects.
Right.
I know you want another question.
It's okay.
But does any other person have a question, and specifically our students?
Yes.
Because when there is a big age gap, you're like, oh, they can do it for me. So I don't know if we're the same age, so you can feel comfortable if you have any questions. Also in relation to your context of the US, because I don't have that context in my brain. And I think your voice, I don't think your voice matters. I don't want to put you in the difficult position of doing this though. But go.
Okay. I'm Lily. Hi. I have a question, but it's more from the artistic side of things. How do you guys kind of choose what extra shots to put in? Specifically you're emphasizing the fact that they're a hurting community, and you're emphasizing even the people that are in frame in that one interview, it's a grandma, it's him, it's his daughter, their generation. How intentional is your shooting process?
It was intentional in order to see how this community gets involved in this area, and it was also interesting because we didn't direct, let's say, this thing to sit closely, but this happened as a way of trying to be close to her grandmother and feel this sense of caring close to the grandmother, and we tried also to focus and to create this frame that the narrator and the two women that care of each other and pass these stories or let's say the traumas from the past to the new generation, and this is something that maybe sometime it could be solved by them also. And we tried also to set a question about how these things gets developed through the passage of time.
Yeah, it's an interplay between a more directive approach to what's happening. And again, I don't want to repeat myself, but we are guests in their house, so we don't feel the authority of this is a cinematic set and we have the saying of how things work. We are the guests. We are sitting on the table that we were served coffee by them, so this is where we did the interview. We try in our filming process to include, because moving image cinema is like a time-based medium and it's based on time, so we try to include the before and after of the act of recording something. And another thing is, for example, with a young kid being there, sees his niece, right? He's the niece of the visiting uncle from Germany. And in like something that we share a lot between like different cultures here in the Balkans, the Mediterranean, is like the notion of storytelling and how this works in the sort of the family. So it wasn't like nobody talked about that, but my assumption is that the mama put the kid there to listen to. She was also listening to his storytelling, his narration, like we did, in the same time. And I think it's nice.
Questions? There you go. I have a question about your intention, your biggest goal with the film, and thank you so much for doing it because it's beautiful. Are you intending to make people aware of the issue, or are you asking, and of course you have empathy for the people, but are you also hoping for some sort of action to happen from it?
Okay, so in the first part of the question, raising awareness is something that a lot of people like doing. We don't really have the power to do that. We play our part in sharing stories, and our goal is to do it in the best way possible. Like we don't have a campaign of like letting the people know, like this is not our job exactly. At the same time, we believe that it's deeply important for those voices and stories and fragmented stories and non-stories and imaginative stories to be heard and shared. So, in those terms, yes. What was the second part of it?
I don't know, but maybe that is your point. So you want them to be understood. You want connection between the audience and the film, and that is.
Yeah. In the way they choose, the way they want to be understood, or in the level they want to be understood.
Right.
And also for the audience, it is a challenge for us also to not make this, let's say, a very strict educational moment for the audience, but try to create a space for engage with the story, try to be part of the story. But in this way, it's very important because sometimes when the information, for example, that you want to deliver out of this framework goes through this way, it's more powerful and more, let's say, speaks directly to people.
I think sorry. I just wanted to say that to this I would add that the philosophy of each one teach one. This is something that you will share with other people and it's gonna expand. And that's why I really wanted people from the US and other countries to be here, because it's a notion that no one really knows. But in order for you to spread the awareness, obviously you can start from the video and then it reflects the educational system, history, what kind of history do you learn about Greek culture and Greece in general. So then it starts touching other sectors that actually have to do the job, the practical organizational job of passing the story to the kids and the next generation. Yeah. You wanted to say something, and I interrupted. I didn't.
Yeah, my question was about the term Afro-Greeks, because that guy in it at one point said like before you said it was kind of a more religiously codified identity, let's say. So I'm wondering if this term is like something that, because it's also a term that's become quite popular, right, in like Athens, let's say, or across Greece, in terms of like describing and claiming this kind of like dual identity of being Greek but also being of African descent. So I'm wondering if that's something that that community's been identifying with and using to describe themselves for a long time, whether that's something that perhaps he's like got from being maybe in Germany and this term becoming popularized more in the last like 30 years, I guess. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I would say that most of the people of the community are not really aware of this discourse. And they don't have like a common, like a yes or no in that question. And we also don't frame them in that way. It's an interesting question, and I think it opens up like a space and lots of room for discussion, and it needs also the right people to be involved in that discussion. My own personal opinion, which is not very important, is that it's a matter of like self-identification. So, about specifically the Avato community, maybe some of them would use that term, but it's not a term, for example, that is used widely in the area. It's not an official term or something like that.
Do they have?
They have an unofficial group that called Avato Cambo, the Black of Venus.
Of
Plains, yes.
Yeah.
Of the plains.
Of the plains,
Yeah.
because this is how the area is called.
Yes, the campus.
It's a campus. Yeah.
So that's a sort of informal term in the area
Yeah.
That
for
they
these
use
people that they use.
in their Facebook groups. In
Gotcha.
Turkish. Also.
What's it?
So thank you so much for the very good presentation. And since we started discussing terminology, so throughout your presentation, you were using figures of speech and metaphors having to do with the distinction between inside and outside, the difficulty of penetrating something that seems to be closed off to foreigners. So I would like to bring up the name of the village. For the non-Greek speakers, Avato, right, is a place that cannot be approached by the uninitiated, so essentially a place closed off to foreigners, right?
No,
It also has some really strong religious connotations, even ancient Greek, but also Orthodox Christians. So I was wondering, is there a story behind that? Regardless of if there is a story, are you planning to use this in some way in your documentary, in the title, or talk about it, or something like that?
Thank you. It's definitely the working title of the whole project, Avato, and definitely reflects the place. The story that we know is interesting because it's like a crossover between like the history, the social and political history of the place, but also the environmental one. So it took the name Avato because the place used to be swamps, right? So it was inhabited, not of use, like difficult to exploit, and nobody wants to be there. So, of course, after the people working or being forced to work in the area of Kavala and the Nestos Delta, mainly working on the tobacco fields back in the day, they moved there, but they were also put there, which is a very clear statement also how like the authorities dealt with them as like the Buddhist people.
They were given the shittiest land, basically, to live on.
Yeah.
I mean, to put it simply.
Yes.
Yeah,
just going a bit back to the term of Afro-Greek, I wanted to mention that there's actually going to be a conversation about Afro-Greeks this Sunday. Because I don't identify as Afro-Greek, for example. There are some people of second generation that do identify as Afro-Greek. So there is this not misunderstanding, but there's just not a consensus on if we define ourselves as Afro-Greeks. And the fact that I wrote in the poster the Afro-Greeks of Avato was because in my perception, I was like, since they don't know their roots and they're of African descent, we could say Afro-Greeks. But obviously what is important is how they define themselves and how they consider themselves. And that will just come through time from their mouth. Yeah. Questions? Or, I don't know, whatever you have in mind.
My name's Hans Mueller, here for a term. You mentioned that this community, just a few moments ago, you mentioned that they speak Turkish as well as Greek. And one of the main spokesperson from the community also mentioned that 30,000 people from the community had been sent to Turkey. So I'm wondering, are they in communication with the group in Turkey? Because presumably you have then Afro-Turks, that's a current term, as well as Afro-Greeks, and where in the main divide in Greece is religion, and presumably not so much race. So I'm wondering how the community in Turkey fares in comparison with the group that was left behind in Greece.
Yes, this is something that is also complicated because some of the Afro-Turks identify themselves as Afro-Greeks because they came from Thessaloniki. So again, it's a whole complicated history in terms of how they try to find the pathways for them to link their stories, and but in they have also one of our main protagonists that narrates the story has a close relationship with the Afro-Turks. They are more organized in terms of having organization, collecting documents, histories, and so on, and creating, let's say, a solid archive about their situation. But it's still a mark of question because there are some that the close of the coast, that they came close to the Thessaloniki areas and Kavala, and the name that we live here, we are Turks, but we came from Greece. And this creates this complicated history in terms of how they name themselves. But in terms of the Avato, it's complicated because there are some, as I told, some issues that make them feel close to the Turkish minorities population, and also there is a historical parameter that was really important. For example, what enslaved them was the Ottoman Empire, and what liberates them was the Ottoman Empire at the same time, because it was something really important as information. After 20 years, the master that owns slavery could give them the freedom, which is something contradictory of what happened, for example, to the Western colonization policies, that if you are a slave, you are always a slave.
Yeah. That struck me. Sorry. Any other person? Amy.
Just one, I'm Amy.
Sorry.
You had mentioned concerns from some of the people you spoke to that we don't see represented about being misrepresented. Does this come from bad experiences and how this community has been represented in the past? Is it about Islamophobia in Greece? Like, did you get a sense of where, I mean, it's very reasonable fear, but did you get a sense of where it was coming from?
I would say it has to do with specifically the media coverage, how they are being misrepresented. Like news outlets, media, like some articles of the. I wouldn't say Islamophobia at all because the wider region is inhabited like the largest Muslim community in Greece. So no, it's not about that. Another topic that maybe can be a topic for another event is like the complications, let's say, about marriages or affairs, not only between like black and white, but mainly between Christian and Muslim people. Because this is the main barrier there. Another thing, like religion and language in this place are tools of survival, are tools of existence, and they are also tools of conflict. And I believe that like this subject goes very deep.
What about the cultural part in terms of like music and that aspect of it? Do you really, I don't know, I think you get what I mean.
It's mainly influenced by, it's a crossover between like countries like Greek folk lifestyle and Muslim.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. Also the rituals and how they use like weddings and stuff like that are mainly informed by the Muslim culture. Yeah.
Any other person? I feel many people are talking, so I feel good. I'm less stressed. Any question? CYers. Clearly did. Thank you. You wanted to say something, sorry.
No, it's
There was
okay.
another
I
question.
think we've sort of covered it.
Okay, amazing. Okay.
Besides, if we start again, it's a huge issue. No, I mean, it's the whole issue of who gets to define whom
Yeah.
and how they, because it's a whole issue up there. It's really complicated, as these nice guys already pointed out several times.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't want to formally chat over the cake. I saw there's cake.
Yes. So basically, that's my notion to the closure of this event. If there is nothing more to say, you can grab some cake. You can probably say more things there. I'm really grateful that you all came. Thank you so much. This is my first event. That's why I'm so stressed. Usually, I'm very chill. But yeah, I'm really, really happy. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for
I hope you enjoyed it. This is very important to me. And yeah, the best is yet to come, no?